Lace 'em up, let's start the show. We're digging in with Tripp. 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 We're digging in with Tripp today, yeah.
Welcome to another edition of Digging In. This lead-up needs sub-zero introduction. Momentarily, we're going to grab our shovels and dig in with Wayne Gretzky. Don't need to say anything more than that. So let's get right to, in Roadrunner fashion, our presenting sponsor, who's been with us from the first inning, from the drop of the puck, the New Country Auto Group. Thanks to them, we're allowed to dig in with Wayne Gretzky. All sorts of tremendous family-owned, family-created, family-run dealerships up and down the eastern seaboard in New York, Connecticut, Maryland, Pennsylvania, down to Florida. Elite auto manufacturers such as Ferrari, Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Maserati, Smart Car. If an escape pod is your thing, they check every box. newcountry.com. I remind you, please, I borderline implore you to rate and review the show honestly. We have thick skin. Constructively, we want to know how we can satisfy you more on all audio platforms as well as YouTube. So please, we welcome the communication, what you think of the episodes, how they can be better. Digintrip.com for our ever-expanding merchandise line. Going to definitely have to add we have some Oiler clad on there already, but some hats, visors, the great golfer that the great one is. Right now, the Stahl Bunyan line, 100% of the proceeds going to the Stahl Foundation. The hoodies, the carpet special, recent guest, Sebastian Aho, the Juice, UC Jokinen, 100% of those proceeds going to the children's charity that UC and Pecorine created, that Sebastian Aho has become centrally involved in northern Finland. I hope to get to that tremendous event the last Saturday in August in Oulu, their hometown. Without further review, man, this is pretty cool. Let's grab our shovels and let's dig in with Wayne Gretzky. Wayne, it's a thrill to have you on. You know where I want to start? 22 years ago, yesterday, as we take this, I was watching film, your last game in the NHL at Madison Square Garden. I was prepping yesterday with our dear mutual friend, Kirk Muller. Oh, yeah. And he said, I bet Wayne, we all know what he accomplished, but I bet what he misses most is the time spent at the back of the bus with the boys. Was Kirk right? Was Kirk right?
Yeah, and I like the locker room too. There's nothing like being on a team. You know, when I decided to retire, reality was I decided probably in January of '99. I talked to my family and told them this was going to be it, but I didn't want to do a big sort of tour and all that goes with that. So I kept it quiet. I said, when my wife asked me, why do you think why do you think it's the time? And I said, the practices, the games, traveling with the guys, the locker room, as you said, being at the back of the bus, all that was the best. When I knew it was time to retire, the older you get, and Tom Brady is probably living proof of that the more time you have to train in the off season to get ready for the next season. So for me, I just really hit a wall in the realization of, I'm not sure I can put in 3.5, 4 hours a day in June, July, and August to get ready for next September. And that's kind of how I decided, it's probably the right time to retire. And it kind of leaked out that, I was going to end my career. And one of the great moments of my life, being a hockey player, was in Ottawa that Thursday night, from the reception of the Canadian fans and the Ottawa fans, but As you know, typically there's two buses that take the guys to the arena. One goes a little bit earlier than the other bus. Go down, have a cup of coffee, and guys sit around. Guys get on one bus, and guys get on the second bus. And when I walked into the coffee room, Brian Leach, who was the captain, he had rallied all the guys to go on one bus. So we all sat around in the coffee room, told stories for a few minutes, and we all rode together on one bus to the Ottawa Arena. So that was one of the coolest parts of my retirement, was that actual day and bus ride and game in Ottawa. It was pretty spectacular.
Wayne, thank you for that. That's setting the tone, because every time I go up to the TV booth, I see there's a picture, on the wall there leading to the booth of capturing that last game in Ottawa. In the 22 years since, my gosh, you've led Canada off the ice to Olympic gold in Salt Lake. You've coached in the league. You've been a horse whisperer for Dustin Johnson. Have there been any moments when you talk about the locker room, back of the bus, having coffee with the guys, that you could point to that I really missed it at this time?
Oh, everything. People come up to me still today and they say, do you miss playing? Do you miss being in the NHL? And I tell them all the time, I desperately miss it. I wish I could still play, especially as the years have gone on, the game has gotten better and the athletes are better and the training's better and the equipment's better. And that's progression. 20 years from now, it's going to be better than today. So yeah, I miss everything about it. I wish I could still play. It was a huge part of my life, and everything I have in my life is because of hockey. I tell the story that when I grew up as a kid, when I had success as a youngster, but there was never a time that my dad and I or my mom sat around and said at 10 or 11 or 12 or 13, Wayne's 100% going to play in the NHL. I wasn't a Sidney Crosby, and I wasn't a Connor McDavid, where it was a sure thing, can't miss. Even when I signed at 17, there was still this sort of cloud over me saying that I'm not sure he can play at the next level. His size, he's not fast, he's not strong. So everything I have in my life is through hard work and love and passion for the game of hockey. And when I was a child, it was a big world. We didn't have the internet. Vancouver seemed like it was in another country. Newfoundland seemed like it was in another country. And my dream as a kid was, through the game of hockey, to be able to see the country and be able to see the world. And fortunately for me, because of my love of the game, that's exactly what happened. So yeah, I truly miss it. I started skating when I was 2.5 years old, and all of a sudden at 39, you're kind of older in the sports world, but in the reality, you're a really young man in the real world. And so it was time to move on. I wish I could have played 1 or 2 more years, but I think I left at the right time. I'm proud of the fact that, I think one of the great things about retiring is when people say, you could have played 1 more year. So I'm happy with the timing of when I did retire.
Can I ask you, because within the last, couple of months, you gave an amazing eulogy in your hometown of Brantford, remembering your dad. Hockey was the vehicle for you to see the world and what you've done to make it the global game that it is, Wayne. But what do you point to as to you never have lost your Brantford, Ontario roots, salt of the earth through and through? Why is that?
Well, listen, as great as sports is, and it really is something special to be part of a team, and whether it's in hockey or basketball, football, lacrosse, it really is special. And for me, being a part of a hockey team was really unique and really special. And I learned that through my parents. My dad always said to us, doesn't matter how good you are or how good you think you are, there's somebody out there that's better than you are. He was very humble. he believed in sports. He believed that sports were good for kids. That it taught you how to be unselfish. It taught you dedication and work ethic, and all those things that go with being a team player. And he never laid off of that. That was always his forte. That you're going to learn that in life there's pressure. So you either don't want to deal with it or you accept it. And from a young age, I accepted the fact that I was under a microscope and that I was going to be under a great deal of pressure. And so from a young age, all the way throughout my career, I understood that. And that came directly from my parents, and especially my father. And as you said, it was an emotional time when he passed. We spent 20 days with him in our hometown, and he was a man of great faith, but he also loved life. And, he didn't want to leave. It was evident by how strong he was to the very end, but he passed peacefully. And it was a great opportunity for us as a family to get together because of our careers and our lives. I really hadn't been back to Brantford for more than 3 or 4 days at a time. So to spend 20 days there with our entire family and friends, to see some people, it was nice. And, as I said, the good news was that he passed peacefully, and on the other side of it, he didn't want to pass. He was very much a believer in life, although he knew that there was life after death.
And he is with your mom, who you credited for manifesting the toughness that is you. And I want to further, Wayne, about people. There's no way you'll ever remember this, but when I had my shot of espresso in the NHL all of 4 days, I was talking to Paul Maurice yesterday. He was my coach, and he was probably in the coach's office in Winnipeg with your buddy, Charlie Huddy. Yeah. And I said, Mo, do you realize when you sent me down after a game at Madison Square Garden, because you had that area between the two dressing rooms, Wayne and Janet Gretzky were right next to you when you were sending me the American Hockey League. And Wayne, you'd never remember this, but you gave me like a wink of acknowledgement. I mean, it was like a surreal moment. And it was unbelievable. And yeah. And I've had a couple other moments with you through the years. Wayne, you make every person feel valuable. You have to earn it, but you make them feel valuable. And as a leader, why is that so important in what you define as success?
Well, when I was 17, I turned pro in Indianapolis. And I was supposed to be this young kid that was going to maybe be the savior of the WHA and savior of the Indianapolis Racers. And the reality was, both as a player and as a ambassador to the game at 17, I wasn't ready for that. It was too big of a responsibility in some ways. It was not the pressure of it, but the fact that I was only 17. And it was a little bit sort of an unfair position for me to be in the sense that I wasn't going to save a franchise or a league over 6 or 8 games. So when I got sold or traded to Edmonton, it was the turning point probably in my career, in a sense that I went to a city where it was a wonderful hockey environment. It was less stress as far as me having to sell tickets at 17. I could just be one of the players, and I could just be a player on that team. I got to the team. It was the right team for me. We had older veteran players like Paul Schmier and Jim Nielsen, Dave Dryden, Bill Flett, Garnet Ace Bailey. And those guys really took me under their wing. They treated me as an equal. Although I was 17, they treated me like their own son. They really took an eye out for me and took care of me. And my first day that I got there, Glenn Sather called me in his office, and he said to me, I played with Bobby Orr, I played with Guy Lafleur, I played with John Beliveau. He played with some of the great players and some of the great organizations. And here's what I learned from those guys. And here's what I want you to learn. And here's what I want you to do going forward. And one of the first things he said to me is, one day we're going to be in the National Hockey League sooner than you think. He said, one day you're going to be captain of this hockey team, and one day we're going to win the Stanley Cup. And so when you're 17 years old and you're still trying to make professional hockey, I can remember kind of skipping out of his office thinking, wow, this is the greatest thing in the world. Now, in between all that, there was a lot of hard work and a lot of cracking the whip from Glenn Sather that made us all better. But I learned from that day how those players took care of me as a kid. I mean, it was truly remarkable. I had like 14 stepdads, and yet when we got in the locker room, they treated me as an equal teammate. So I learned from those guys that each and every player in an organization is invaluable. And so when I did become captain, when guys would come up and down from the minors, and I was lucky, guys like Kevin Lowe and Paul Coffey and Mark Messier, we treated every guy the same. We got rid of rookie initiation. We thought that was silly. It was hard enough for a 19, 20-year-old to make it in the NHL, let alone have to worry about being initiated. And so Lee Fogelin, who was one of our first captains, and Ron Chipperfield, they really embraced that and treated everybody as an equal. So I had great mentors that taught me what it was like to be a leader of a hockey club, and what I needed to do more than just show up and play hockey. So when Glenn did make me captain, I think at 22 years old, I'd already played almost 5 years of professional hockey. Although I was still young, I was really mentally ready to take on that role. But again, even if you have that role, you need tremendous support. And I had that with Paul Coffey and Mark Messier and Kevin Lowe and Lee Fogel, and just a real special group of guys. And so every single guy that came through that locker room, we would say he's an equal and he's an important part of the success or the failure of this hockey club. And so I think that was just a mindset that we got when we all grew up in Edmonton. And, fortunately, it all worked out for us.
Well, one quick note, it's sort of a lighter note, Wayne, but did you have I ever told you that it could have worked out that I would have been Paul Coffey's brother-in-law?
No, I didn't know that. I had enough trouble worried about what was going on the ice.
Wait, when he was a Hurricane, he set me up with his sister-in-law, Suzanne. Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So Coff, at one point, I was young, Wayne, very young, and I enjoyed some wonderful times with them and the Littler family. That's Steph. And so anyway, at one point, in the city of your arch rival, the Calgary Flames, Coff said he wanted to have dinner with me. It was a Japanese steakhouse, just him and me. And he looked across the way. He goes, "Hey, Tripp," or Emmett is my real name. "You ready to get serious with Suzanne?" And I said, I said, "Nope." He said, "Well, cut her loose." And so, and I listened. Early in my broadcast career, it was thrilling when he became a Hurricane.
Well, Paul and I, people probably don't know this, but Paul and I, we played against each other as kids. We became teammates at the age of 14 in Toronto for the Toronto Young Nats. Paul sort of followed in my footsteps. He ended up in Sault Ste. Marie the year after I was there. And then, of course, he ended up in Edmonton. And I always say this to people, that he was so underrated as a player. Bobby Orr was the greatest defenseman to ever live, and maybe him and Gordie Howe, the two greatest players that ever did play the game. But I always say Paul is so underrated. People don't realize how great of a player he was, and how good of a teammate he was. In 1980, he was one of the first hockey players to start riding a stationary bike after a hockey game. And I used to say to him, I'd say, "What are you doing?" He said, "You got to ride after a game." So he was not only a great player, but he was dedicated and he was ahead of his time. And man, could he skate. We used to do this drill, 4 or 5 man units in each corner. And Charlie Huddy and Paul were always with myself, Yeri, and Semenko or Tikkanen. And it was 3 laps one way and then sort of 3 laps the other way. And we do that like 3 different times. And always inevitably on the second lap, he would turn and start skating backwards, and not one of us could catch him. And he would skate backwards for that second lap. And I'd be swinging my stick at his ankles, trying to get him to slow down. And I always said this, I said, I never really got to see Bobby Orr skate live. The equipment he used was basically running shoes with a blade on it. And they tell me that Bobby was the greatest skater anybody ever saw. But I always said, my gosh, if he was a better skater than Paul Coffey, he must have been skating on top of the ice, because Paul was really unique and really special and one of the most beloved teammates that anybody could have, and obviously went on to be a great champion. And the one thing that people might not know about Paul is his passion for the game is just incredible. And he coached youth hockey for years and years, and just truly enjoyed it and loved sharing his knowledge of the game. And he's really one of the most respected teammates anybody could ever have.
It's amazing because my first year broadcasting, for him to come to Carolina, then to date Suzanne and didn't really get to know him that much better. I mean, it was surreal, to be completely blunt. But hey, Wayne, it wasn't just, you talked about the leaders when you were in the World Hockey Association and then when you were the captain. Mm-hmm. But when I talk about people, you made and you make everybody feel a part. And if I may, I want to ask you about your late amazing friend and equipment manager, Joey Moss. Mm-hmm. Why was his greatness and will always be part of the Oiler greatness?
First of all, when I grew up, my dad used to always say to me, I don't know why the good Lord chose you to give you this great abilities and God-gifted talent, but basically look at me and say, don't blow it. But with that came these things off the ice that would eventually lead for me understanding the world, not just in hockey, but outside of the game of hockey. So the Canadian Institute for the Blind is located in Brantford. So as a youngster, I had an opportunity to spend time at the school and around kids that were obviously blind. And with that, my dad says, you can't say mentally retarded anymore. He says, you have to say it's the proper wordage is mentally challenged. So my aunt was mentally challenged, but in the 50s, they used to put kids who were mentally challenged basically in asylums, and they would drug them and et cetera, et cetera. It's just knowledge. We didn't know any better back then. So my grandmother didn't believe in it. So she kind of hid her and kept her at home. So my aunt never had any education. She eventually passed away living with my mom and dad. But we spent many years with her. She couldn't read or write, but she could understand what time the sports came on TV at 6:15. She knew what time it came on the radio at 6:10. She would play with us. And so we grew up around somebody who was like that. My grandfather spoke Russian. My grandmother spoke mostly in Polish, and the kids that they had, the siblings, were raised in English. Now, here's my aunt who never been to school, had no education. She could understand 3 languages. We would talk to her in English, the kids. My dad would speak to her in Ukrainian, my grandmother Ukrainian, and my grandfather would speak to her in Russian, and she understood all 3 languages. And I used to sit there and think, wow, if you don't believe in the good Lord, something's wrong with you, because this young lady has no education. So I grew up around that environment. So when I got to meet Joey was working at a bottle depot, and he was making 50 cents an hour, working 8 hours a day and getting on a bus at 7 a.m. and getting home at 5:30 at night. And I just remember thinking, there's got to be something better here. There's got to be something that can help Joey, but just as important, help our hockey club. So I took him down to the locker room one day, and I knew he had a passion for sports, and I knew he loved hockey. And I sat down with Glenn Sather, and I thought, gosh, is there any way we can incorporate this young man into our group? And he said, absolutely. He didn't even hesitate. He said, have him here tomorrow morning at 9:00. Well, he started the next morning at 9 o'clock, and he would vacuum the locker room. He would wash all the towels, wash the underwear. He had responsibilities that he wasn't just there as a figure. He actually had a job and an opportunity. And we used to always sit around and tease about it, Mark and I, and Paul. And we would laugh that, Joey's going to be here years and years after we're all gone. Well, that's exactly what happened. Joey was there forever. And I think what Joey brought to the province of Alberta and to the country of Canada wasn't so much for the kids who were mentally challenged. It was more what he did was he gave a ray of hope for parents, that these parents saw what Joey was doing, and they saw how he was thrust into the middle of society and that he could be part of the real world. And I think it gave a lease on life for the parents, that these parents would sit there and go, wow, you know what? Yeah, my son or my daughter's mentally challenged, but there is life out there for them and there is opportunity. And that's what Joey Moss brought to the country and to the province of Alberta. And so that's something that I know his family's very proud of. He used to live with me days on days, and he used to stay with me, and he'd watch every hockey game, and just he was a great companion. Not only did I think I helped him and the Oilers helped him, but he helped us tremendously. He made us see life in even a different light, and that was so important to all of us.
Wayne, thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you about one particular championship you and Joey and another guy shared, because the great game of hockey. We have a bunch of mutual friends, and Steve Smith was an assistant coach in Carolina, where I long have worked, and I really enjoyed Smitty. And he would get on the plane when we had a long trip after a game, and he'd take off his dress shirt and get into something more comfortable. And I swear, Wayne, the Stanley Cup tattoo on his back was taller than me at 5'9". All right. So when he had that unfortunate moment in '86 against Calgary, he's a young player in the league, and you give the cup to him first the next year. When did you make, that's unbelievable. When did you make that decision? It was going to Smitty.
Yeah. Well, listen, first of all, it was just such an intense, wonderful rivalry, Calgary-Edmonton. It's one of the great things about sports, Toronto, Montreal, Islanders, Rangers, Edmonton, Calgary. And, it's what makes rivalry so unique is not only just the players, and the intensity that the players bring to the game and to a series, but the compassion and the passion that the fans have. I mean, it's a true life and death scenario that goes on between Calgary fans and Edmonton fans. And there's a hatred for each other because not personally and not for any reason that as a person, but they're trying to get something that you want and vice versa. And today, people will probably be surprised at the amount of crossover charity work that the Flames and the Oilers do, the guys that played in the 80s and battled each other. So when we did lose in '86, it was devastating. We had won twice in a row. The ironic thing, I think we won games 2 and 4 and 6 in Calgary, if my memory serves me correct. So when we did come home for Game 7, we knew it was going to be a battle, and it was. It was a tremendous hockey game, and it was a fluky sort of crazy way to lose the series. And you don't lose the series because of one goal, but that was highlighted because it came at the end. And so I don't think people realize that as devastated as Steve was, we were more devastated for him because it was just a crazy, fluky play that could happen to anybody. And so I used to always tease Fierzy that he couldn't get out of the way of one shot. But it happens, right? And so Steve was such an important part of the success of the organization. And as a young guy, we knew he was going to be a big part of the future. And so as a group, we didn't even talk about it. We didn't even bring it up. We just sort of said in September, let's put our noses down to the grindstone here and let's get it back. And so when we did win Game 7, and believe me, we were a little bit nervous after being up 3-1, and you lose Game 5 at home, and all of a sudden you're winning late in Game 6, and you lose Game 6. So we knew we were in for a battle in Game 7, and it was an emotional game, probably one of the most emotional games I've ever been involved with, because the stakes were so high, and it was basically it was like playing for a gold medal. You had one game left. So when we did win. It was a team effort. Everybody deserved to be part of it, and we just all felt as a group that, Steve was so important for the success of our team that year and the success of us winning that year, that we just as a group wanted to show him that we didn't blame him for losing in '86, that it was a team loss, and he was a big part of the success going forward of our hockey club. And I think that's what we were trying to get across to everyone.
One of the previous championships, Wayne, in '85. Mm-hmm. Again, I was prepping. Mutual friend. I sat next to Rick Tocchet at Mark Recchi's wedding. Okay, and this is classic, Wayne, because I was involved in a long distance relationship at the time, and Toc goes, "Well, you're going to see about the relationship. Where are you going?" I said, "Vietnam," and he goes, Whoa, you're going to see about a girl in Vietnam? It's not like you're going from Cleveland to Pittsburgh. And so this is, Wayne, this is you at the draft in Dallas. I'm telling his story because Toc's asking me, how did it go with the girl? And then I get a tap on my shoulder. Hey, Tripp, don't want to interrupt. Just want to say, Wayne Gretzky, good to see. This is the salt of the earth person you are, okay? And I will admit it. Inside, I'm like, whoa. It's Wayne Gretzky that just tapped me on the shoulder. But what I want to ask you is, because this comes from Toc, apparently he finished you in '85, big hit. You played Phil. What happened? Because this comes from him in that '85 final.
Well, first of all, I talked to him yesterday because I'm thoroughly impressed by the coaching job that he's done this year. It's been magnificent. I'm so happy for him, and it's great to see that they're battling for that 4th playoff spot. And he's got 2 goaltenders who are hurt and a young guy that's been in there, and he's still kind of hanging in there. So I just so proud of him. He's done an incredible job. But, as we sort of were arch enemies, obviously in '85 and '87. Again, Paul Coffey, Sault Ste. Marie, Rick played in Sault Ste. Marie. So we had this sort of path with each other. And the 3 of us are good friends today. And we became pretty close in '87 Canada Cup, which was one of the most exciting hockey events that I was ever part of. And he was a big part of the success of that team. Him and Brian Propp and Brent Sutter and Dale Howarchuk. We were losing game 3-0. And Mike Keenan sort of put Mario and I on the bench to give us a little rest, I guess, and give us a wake-up call. We better get going. So Tocchet and his line took over and got a couple of goals, and all of a sudden we're back in the game, and we ended up winning 6-5. But we were playing in the '85 finals, and Rick was a big guy and he had long hair. In those days, Bobby Clark had their Flyer players wear these big shoulder pads. They were like football pads. So they were a really big hockey club, and I was freezing the puck in the corner. We were killing the penalty, and we were in the far end to the right of Pelle Lindbergh, and I was trying to freeze the puck. And Mark Howe was in there, and Brad McCrimmon, and Tocchet, and I think it was Timmy Kerr and maybe Brian Propp, and they were whacking my ankles and hitting me. And then they finally blew the whistle. In those days, it took a long time to get a face-off against the boards in the corner, especially in the offensive zone when you're killing a penalty. But the whistle went, and he still kept whacking my ankles. And by that time, our 3 other guys had gotten in there, and their 5 guys were in there. So we have a big scrum of 9 guys, and he's still cross-checking me and whacking me. And in those days, you could sort of get away with that stuff. And I said to him, finally, I had enough. And I turned to him and I said, will you relax? The whistle went, just relax. And, people who don't know this, there's a lot of banter that goes on between hockey players when they're on the ice. There's a lot of talking that you don't hear. And I basically said, will you relax and just calm down. The whistle went. And he looked at me and he said, get used to it. Every shift, every period, all 7 games. And as he said that, I looked up at him and I said, well, I don't know what series you're playing in, but I only plan on playing 4. Well, the whole 9 guys started laughing as we're leaving the corner. We get to the bench and somebody said, what happened down there? What's everybody laughing about? So it's one of those things we kid about to this day. But, he played hard and he was, wanting to win, get his name on the Stanley Cup, and you do whatever you can to win. And obviously that's part of, especially in the finals, there's a lot that goes on.
He's an outstanding coach. And I'd be remiss because another coach who was roommate of yours in Nagano, along with Marty Brodeur and Steve Eisman, Roddy Brindamore. So Roddy, he said yesterday he's getting ready for a game in Tampa as we tape this. He said, so your Gretz is coming on, huh? And what did he say to me? Don't mess it up. Okay. But he goes, Wayne, he goes, don't mess it up. But then he was like a kid in a candy store. He goes, can you ask him if he ever watches our games? No, don't ask him that. Can you? Maybe you could ask him. So, your former roommate in Nagano, Roddy B. Do you tune into any of his games because he's doing a very fine job coaching as well?
Yeah, he's done an incredible job, and what a tough division that they're in. All those teams, to me, Tampa Bay and Carolina and Florida, I love how they play the game. They chase the puck. They don't sit back. They move the puck. They go to open holes. They forecheck. They're getting strong goaltending. They're aggressive on the penalty kill. To me, that's how the game is played. And I'm so happy that they're having the success they're having because it makes our game better. And I watch a lot of games. I mean, it's my life, right? I love the game of hockey, so I tune in as much as I can. But, in 98, when we went to Nagano, people don't maybe remember this, but that was the first year of professional hockey players being part of the Olympic Games. And although there was a lot of excitement and a lot of positive vibes from the fans and the league and such worldwide, there was also that little bit of, well, we're having professional athletes here and they're spoiled and I don't know how this is going to work in the village and et cetera, et cetera. Well, it was such the right group of people, guys like Eiserman and Roddy, guys like Al McGinnis, just really classy guys. And when we got to Nagano, we were so excited to be in the village. We were so excited to be part of not only Team Canada, the hockey team, but Team Canada, the Olympic team. We would watch the curlers, we would sit around and talk to the skiers. I mean, the figure skaters, we truly loved it. The first time that I walked into the concessions or the lunch place, dinner place in the village was, I remember it like yesterday, because when I walked in, there was about 15 to 20 athletes sitting around just having coffee, talking, and it was a place to sort of hang out. And as I went up to the buffet line, and they have food from Asia, they have Russian food, North American food, Italian, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty surreal. This is, something really special. And then I looked over and I saw this McDonald's buffet line, and I'm like, oh my God, a buffet line from McDonald's? And then I'm looking at all these athletes who are looking at me, and I'm like, I grabbed a Big Mac and French fries and a Diet Coke, and I sat down. I think they all probably looked at me saying, he's a professional athlete. So we really were soldiers in the sense that we loved being part of the Olympic team. And it really made the years later in 02, 06, and 10 easier for people to accept and understand that these hockey players were going to fit in. And as you said, I was so lucky. I roomed with Roddy, Stevie Eiserman, and Marty Brodeur. And our biggest fight between the four of us was who was going to get the single room. And it wasn't a fight that we wanted it. It was none of us wanted to take it. And of course, I'll tell you how great of a man Marty Brodeur is. We had said to him, Marty, you're the goalie, and goalies live in a different life than players do. And we're like, you get your own room because you can sleep when you want, do what you want, you're on your own. And he goes, no, no, no. And finally, we're like, Marty, take the room. And he's like, you guys, I'm not playing. They told me on the airplane that I'm not going to play. I'm the third goalie. He never told anybody. He didn't complain about it. He was such a team guy. And I remember thinking, wow, what a classy man that is. That, you know, some guys would have been mad or upset that, you know, I'm so mad I'm here. He was so excited for the team, and he was such a classy person. And I remember taking away that, thinking, if you can have a team full of guys that think that way, like Yzerman and Roddy and Marty Brodeur, you're going to win a lot of championships and a lot of games. And so one of the greatest experiences in my life, we lost in a shootout, which devastated all of us. But all in all, I think we were pioneers in the sense that people got to see that we weren't spoiled, that we wanted to be part of a team and part of a group, and that we were going to be only a positive for the Olympic team of Team Canada. And I think that's what was taken away from those Olympics.
That is awesome. You know, initially, I have to say, you caught me when you got the Big Mac and fries and a Diet Coke. But, you know, when Roddy came on Digging In, you know, he talked about after, you know, the shootout loss and and you came back to the quad and all the guys came together and Rod, with all your success, Wayne, that was the most impressive moment for him in your entire career, because these are his words. You could see humbly how much representing Canada meant to Wayne, to his very core. And it killed him to see you feeling that disappointment because of that humble pride through and through in Canada. That type of, and that defines Rod's impression of you. What does that mean to you?
Well, listen, my grandparents came over in the 20s to basically live a better life and have an opportunity to have a better life. So when they came over here to look for work, to have freedom of speech, have all those opportunities. So when my dad was born and grew up in Canada, all he ever talked about was how proud he was to be a Canadian and how much it meant that he was born and raised in our country and how wonderful a country we have and how nice the people are. And so, my gosh, from my grandfather to my dad to us as kids, we learned that from the beginning. And I always go back to 1972, the Summit Series, when, to me, one of the greatest 8 games I've ever seen an individual play. Phil Esposito was so dominant and such a force for Team Canada. And I always remember that speech that he gave in Vancouver about they're trying their hardest and he can't believe that Canadians are booing their team. And at the time, it was such a great series and so good for hockey. And obviously it was great because we won. But the 3 best players in the game for Canada weren't playing. Bobby Hull had jumped to the WHA, which people forgot, and they wouldn't let him play. Bobby Orr was hurt. He hurt his knee and he couldn't play. And Gordie Howe had just retired. So we went in as good of a team as we were, and we were a great team. Our 3 best players were not part of that team. And I remember watching Bobby Hull in the stands in Winnipeg in Game 3, I believe. And you could just see the look in his eye, how disappointed he was that he couldn't be part of Team Canada. And I always remember thinking, gosh, here's a guy that's accomplished so much and been such a great player, that if playing for Team Canada means that much to a guy like Bobby Hull, it must be really special. And so when I got that opportunity when I was 16 to play Team Canada Juniors, and it was such an amazing experience to be part of the World Junior Tournament and play for Canada, that I always thought, gosh, one day I hope I can play for Canada. We didn't think about the Olympics because at that time, pros couldn't play in the Olympics. And all I kept thinking was, wow, I want to be a professional hockey player. So I knew if you did one, you couldn't do the other. thankfully 96, 97 came along and we were able to be part of Team Canada 98. I think it's great that we're part of the Olympic Games, and you can see it. And I see it with guys like Connor McDavid, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews. They desperately want to play for their country in these Olympics coming up. And that's so wonderful because that comes all the way back to what guys did in 98 and then 02 and then, of course, in 2010, that these kids not only grow up dreaming of playing in the NHL, they grow up dreaming of winning a gold medal. And that's tremendous for our sport. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's an honor to play for your country, whether it's Canada as a Canadian or the US as an American. And there's nothing like it. Playing in the NHL is special, don't get me wrong, but there's something really, really special that comes through your body and through your mind when they say you're going to play for Team Canada.
I talked to the guy that got the golden goal in Vancouver, Sidney Crosby, yesterday, and he told me his favorite memory with you was the first time he ever met you. It was a summer skate in LA with his longtime agent, Pat Brisson. He said, talk about time and space. He said, nobody wanted to go within 30 feet of you. What do you remember most about, what do you remember about that day on the ice, and what makes you most proud of Sidney?
You know, I just retired around that time and I hadn't skated. And my friend Mike Burnett and Eddie Mio had said to me, they have these 14 or 15 kids that are first rounders that are at this sort of camp for 3 days. Would you like to go watch? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll come and watch. And the rink, it was in Simi Valley, so it was like 12 minutes from my house. And so I got in the car and I went over there. I was sitting there and, you know, I like to kind of watch players myself without knowing who they are and sort of be able to say, well, that guy's really good and here's what that guy does well and this guy. And so as we're watching it, they were sort of telling me he's a first rounder and this guy's a early first rounder and this guy's a late first rounder. And I said, yeah, but who's that kid? Who's that little guy? He's the best player on the ice. And they said, oh, he won't be drafted for 4 years. And I remember thinking, wow, he was already the best player on the ice. And he was 14, and I think these kids were 17 and 18. And so we left there. And I remember I called Eddie Mew and Mike Burnett, and I said, you know, what time do they skate tomorrow? I want to jump on the ice. It was one of the few times in my lifetime that I ever said, gosh, I want to skate with that kid. And so I got my equipment, went back to the rink the next day, and I jumped on the ice with him. And I could see right then he saw the game a different way than everybody else who was on the ice. You could see his vision, his work ethic, his balance on the ice with his skates. You know, he wasn't the biggest guy out there because he was 3-4 years younger, but when he got the puck, you couldn't get it from him. And so I always say I got a chance to play with some of the greatest players ever, and I got an opportunity to skate at least once with Sidney. And I would, excuse me, I always say this. I don't think people, when players retire, we always go, oh my gosh, how's the game going to go on? Gordie Howe retired, and Beliveau, and Bobby Orr. But we find these guys and they come along. And I think what Sidney and Alex Ovechkin have done for the game, not only being great professionals, but being great for their communities, being great for the NHL, Sidney being great for Canada, Alex being great for Russia. It's just really special what those two guys have done, the rivalry they have and how they push each other to be better and how competitive they are. And I think it just says a lot about our game that they're just wonderful young men. As great a players they are, they're probably even better people.
You know, it's hopefully at a future dig-in, Wayne, I want to ask you about your friendship with Alex Ovechkin. But I want to close this one just with a couple of things. I'm a Detroiter. Some of the things that you remembered about your idol, Gordie Howe, when you celebrated his life a few years ago. What's the greatest personal interaction, memory that you always will cherish at the top of your mountain with your friend Gordie Howe?
I have so many. To me, he was the greatest player ever played. He happened to be the nicest man who was ever part of the NHL. I was lucky enough to meet him when I was 10. I played junior hockey with his youngest son, Murray, who went on to be a tremendous doctor. And I know Gordie was so proud of the fact that Murray was a doctor. And then when I turned pro, we became friends and we were teammates in an all-star game. And I always remember I got picked by Jacques Demers to play in this WHA All-Star Series against Russia, at that time the Soviet Union. And I remember thinking, wow, okay, this is such an honor that I made the team. And I really honestly didn't anticipate to play at all, maybe a little bit here and there, which was fine. I was just so thrilled to be named as part of the team. And I walked into the locker room the first day, and the trainer said to me, Coach Demers wants to say hello to you. I walked into his office, and he said, son, congratulations, you're going to center tonight, Mark Howe and the old man. And I remember thinking, wow, the old man, that's what they call him, which I found out later on, that's out of respect. So I went in the locker room. Of course, I was so nervous. I couldn't think. We practiced that day with morning skate. We had so much fun. It was so nice to be on the ice with them. Pictures were taken, obviously. So that night was the first game. I was so nervous. And they'd given me my jersey. And I said, Gordie, my jersey's so big. I don't even know what I'm going to do with this. Obviously, they got this jersey for the wrong guy. And he grabbed my jersey. He said, hold on, I got this. And he went in the back room and he got a needle and thread. And he actually sewed my jersey in the side to make it smaller. And I remember sitting there watching him going, who would believe this, that Gordie Howe is sewing my jersey before an all-star game? So he sews my jersey. We're sitting there before warm-up. And I remember I was kind of shaking and I was kind of nervous. And I looked over and I said, Gordie, I'm so nervous. And Gordie had his two skates resting on the stick that was on the bench of the locker room. And he was leaning back against the wall. And as I turned to him, his eyes were closed and he had his hands sort of together. He opened his eyes and he looked at me and he said, I'm really nervous too. And I remember thinking, wow. So I had so many wonderful moments with him. He was always so positive. And that's why, I remember I said to my dad, I said, gosh, it feels so bad. In some ways, breaking Gordie Howe's record doesn't seem right. And my dad said to me, you might not know this, but he's so happy for you and he's so proud of the game. Someday somebody's going to break your record and you better have the exact same attitude to that person as Gordie Howe has to you. And so that's the way I look at Alex. I think Alex has been absolutely incredible for the game. If he breaks my record, I'll be the first guy to shake his hand. It's only a positive for the sport. I did what I did, and I know it was a different era, but I did what I did, and I'm proud of what I accomplished. And when he breaks my record, I will be there to shake his hand. And like I said earlier, he's been nothing but great for the game of hockey, and I'm so happy that we're friends, and I think that it's wonderful for the sport.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to bid you adieu, but I need one definition, and I want to ask for one favor. Mm-hmm. Wayne, all I've been eating is egg whites and kale salad. So hang on here. I got this cake in Edmonton colors, and it just says, happy belated 60th, Wayne baby. And so,
well, enjoy it.
I want to enjoy it, but the definition I need is, because I cannot send you into the sunset without getting Wayne Gretzky's definition of digging in.
Digging in?
Yep.
Well, two things. Maybe Edmonton and Carolina will play at some point in the playoffs, and if they are, I'll be there and you can eat the cake. Listen, I always said to people ask me all the time, what do you want to be known for as a player? Like playmaker, champion, goal scorer, sort of what is your, what's a compliment to you? And I remember I sat there and I said, when I was 14 years old, a guy said to me, you watch Bobby Clarke play, because he's not the fastest guy and he's not big, but watch how hard he works and watch how dedicated to the game he is, and watch every shift. He never takes a shift off. And I watched Bobby Clarke for a lot of years. And I said, the greatest compliment that anybody can pay me is when they say, I watched Wayne Gretzky play and I didn't realize how hard he worked as a player. And to me, that's digging in. That's the best compliment you can have.
Perfection. Thank you, Wayne. The favor is between now and we dig in with this cake or otherwise, and I'm going to give you some time to consider this. When the borders open, I had a trip, among other places, to see the world, to Mykonos and Sardinia. The next time I go back, I promise I'll give you the nickname back, but would you consider letting me borrow the Great One in Mykonos and Sardinia?
Maybe over there, maybe it's the Great Wand.
Oh, Wayne, thank you so much.
Okay.
I can't, it's been a ball, and I can't wait till the next time.
Thank you, guys, and good luck to the Hurricanes. All right, thanks, man.
Wow, that was pretty cool. I'm going to hold on to that cake until I see you, Wayne. It's now that I have temporary permission to be the Great One in North America and the Great One if I return when the borders open to Mykonos, Sardinia, the rest of Europe. I need to continue these egg whites and kale salad anyway. So that cake will be waiting for you in the freezer. We'll keep it in good condition. Thank you so much for digging in. The Great One himself, Wayne Gretzky. You'll never, I don't think, even equal all of the other tremendous, bigger than their particular sport, personalities, performers. But when you look at growth and pure, humble class, I personally don't think you will ever equal Wayne Gretzky. So thank you, Wayne. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, our longtime presenting sponsor, the New Country Auto Group, for allowing us to dig in with 99. Tremendous dealerships. Let's go from south to north, from Florida to Pennsylvania to Maryland to Connecticut to New York. Ferrari, Maserati, Mercedes, smart car if escape pods is how you want to roll at 10 and 2 behind the wheel. Lexus, BMW, newcountry.com. Please rate and review our show honestly, how we can continue to improve. Hey, being honest of how you can grow is a staple of digging in. Digintrip.com for our ever-expanding merchandise line. And beyond that, enjoy the rest of this hockey season. If Wayne says the game is in great order, guess what? The game is in great order. And with the playoffs approaching, in any of these four divisions, the 4 teams in each that qualify, if you can be like Wayne, you're going deep with your shovels. Looking forward to seeing individually and collectively who is able to check that box as a group. We'll see you soon. Stay safe. Enjoy this stretch run of the National Hockey League, and we will talk to you very soon.
We're digging in with Tripp today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today.